I never thought my life would come to this, a maelstrom of betrayal, guilt, and bitter revenge. I still remember the day my entire world shattered, the day my own cousin falsely accused me of a crime I didn't commit. It wasn't just any crime, it was something so vile, so out of character for me, that my family's reaction was swift and merciless. I was cast out without a second thought, and the pain of being abandoned by those who should have loved me remains seared into my soul. Now, years later, as I recount the events that have defined the rest of my life, I am both haunted and vindicated. This is my story. It began innocuously enough, a family reunion in a sprawling old house that had seen better days. My cousin Elise was always the golden child, the one who could charm even the grumpiest relative with a smile and a kind word. I, on the other hand, was considered the odd one out, quiet, reserved, and prone to introspection. Despite our differences, we had a history, a closeness forged by childhood adventures and shared secrets. I trusted her implicitly, believing that family bonds were unbreakable. I was wrong. During that fateful reunion, a heated conversation erupted about money, inheritance, and long-held grudges. I was in the midst of trying to mediate when Elise's eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Later that night, after the others had retired, whispers began circulating about a scandal that would ruin me. I was accused of embezzlement, stealing a considerable sum of money from our family trust. The evidence was fabricated, the testimony coerced, and the timing was impeccable. Elise, the one person I trusted, had orchestrated the entire charade. The next morning, I awoke to chaos. My relatives, their faces twisted in expressions of disbelief and disgust, confronted me one by one. I tried to defend myself, to explain that I had no part in any wrongdoing, but their eyes were already hard and unyielding. Accusations flew like daggers, and I found myself drowning in a tide of betrayal. It wasn't long before I was forcibly removed from the family estate, my belongings hastily gathered, and my pleas for understanding met with cold indifference. In that moment, I realized that trust, once shattered, was impossible to mend. I was abandoned, not just by a cousin, but by an entire family that had once claimed to love me. For months, I roamed in a state of numb disbelief, haunted by the injustice. I pored over every interaction I had ever had with Elise, trying desperately to pinpoint the moment when her eyes had darkened with something unrecognizable. The realization that she had deliberately set me up was a bitter pill to swallow. With every passing day, the wounds of betrayal festered, transforming into a burning desire for retribution. I vowed to make her pay, to force her to face the consequences of her actions in a way that would leave her with nothing but regret and misery. I immersed myself in meticulous research, uncovering the many layers of deception that had ensnared me. I discovered financial records, forged documents, and a network of accomplices who had been manipulated by Elise's charm and cunning. I connected with a trusted investigative journalist who had a reputation for exposing the dark underbelly of powerful families. Together, we pieced together a damning case against Elise, a narrative of greed and betrayal that was impossible to ignore. Every sleepless night spent poring over evidence only fueled my determination to exact the perfect revenge. It wasn't enough to simply clear my name. I had to shatter the life Elise had built on lies. I devised a plan that would not only reveal her treachery, but also destroy the fragile relationships she had so carefully cultivated. I knew that her downfall would be met with a mixture of relief and outrage from those who had wronged me. And that thought was both satisfying and deeply gratifying. I began by anonymously tipping off the authorities about discrepancies in the family trust accounts. It wasn't long before an audit was launched, and the meticulous trail of financial misdeeds led straight to Elise. When the authorities finally raided her office, the look on her face was one of sheer panic, an emotion I had not seen in her before. The evidence was irrefutable, and Elise's carefully constructed facade crumbled in an instant. In the midst of the chaos, she confessed to her crimes, her voice trembling as she admitted to every deceitful act, every malicious manipulation. The family, still reeling from the years of perceived betrayal, were given a glimpse of the truth. Yet, even as they absorbed her confession, I could sense that their loyalty to tradition and their own interests prevented them from truly acknowledging the injustice that had been done to me. Their silence was a fresh betrayal, a stark reminder that forgiveness was a luxury they were unwilling to grant. I watched from the shadows as Elise was taken away in handcuffs, a bitter smile playing on my lips. The satisfaction was profound, but it was tempered by the realization that revenge, no matter how sweet, could never truly heal the deep wounds of betrayal. I had been vindicated, yet I remained an outcast, a reminder of the dark undercurrents that ran through my family's history. I refused to be reconciled with those who had once been my kin, knowing that reconciliation would be an insult to the pain I had endured. I had no intention of forgiving, and I made sure that everyone knew it. In the aftermath of Elise's arrest, I began receiving messages from old acquaintances and distant relatives, all expressing their regret and sorrow over the way I had been treated. They claimed that they had never truly believed the lies, that they had been blinded by family loyalty. But I had long since learned that words were empty without actions. The damage had been done, and the chasm between me and the rest of my family had grown too vast to bridge. I had nothing left to gain from their feigned apologies or contrite expressions. The only satisfaction I sought was the knowledge that justice, however delayed, had been served. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, and throughout it all, I remained detached, a silent observer to the collapse of the life that had once defined me. I rarely spoke to anyone from the family, and when I did, it was only to remind them that the betrayal was not forgotten. My silence was my strength, a reminder that I would never again be swayed by empty promises or hollow displays of remorse. The taste of revenge was bitter, yet it was also a potent elixir that reminded me of the power of truth. There were moments in the quiet solitude of the night when I allowed myself to wonder what might have been if I had been able to reconcile with my family. I imagined the possibility of a reunion, of laughter and shared memories, of a life free from the shadows of deceit. But those moments were fleeting, replaced quickly by the stark reality that reconciliation was impossible. The betrayal had cut too deeply, and any attempt at forgiveness would be a betrayal of my own pain. I had chosen a path of righteous indignation, one that demanded retribution rather than reconciliation. As the trial reached its climax, the courtroom became a battleground for the truth. Every piece of evidence, every witness testimony, was meticulously scrutinized until the undeniable narrative of Elise's treachery emerged in all its ugly glory. I sat in the gallery, watching as she was condemned by the very people who had once revered her. The sense of vindication was overwhelming, and for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps justice, however delayed, might restore a semblance of balance in my shattered life. But the final blow came not from the courtroom, but from the whispers of the family I once knew. Even as Elise's downfall was broadcast on the evening news and the details of her crimes spread like wildfire, my relatives continued to expect me to remain silent, to accept the charade of unity and forgiveness that had long since become a sham. Their calls for reconciliation, for closure, were nothing more than a desperate attempt to cling to a past that no longer existed, a past in which I had been the villain rather than the victim. Their expectations were as cold and unyielding as the walls that had once confined me, and I knew that I would never be swayed by their hollow pleas. In the years that followed, I chose to walk away from the toxic remnants of my family's legacy. I built a new life, one defined not by the sins of the past, but by the strength of my own resolve. I learned to embrace the solitude that came with being an outcast, finding solace in the quiet moments of reflection and the knowledge that I had risen above the treachery that had once threatened to consume me. I became a living testament to the fact that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how devastating the consequences, one can always reclaim their life and forge a path of their own choosing. Every now and then, I catch glimpses of my old life, a whispered conversation, a familiar laugh in a crowded room, and I am reminded of the price I paid for truth. The scars remain, a constant reminder that trust, once shattered, can never be fully restored. Yet, in that pain, there is also a profound sense of freedom. I am no longer bound by the expectations of those who once held me dear, nor am I shackled by the guilt of a betrayal I did not commit. I have emerged from the darkness with a clarity that few ever experience, a clarity that comes from knowing that revenge, when tempered with truth, is the only justice that truly matters. As I pen these words, I am aware that my silence has become a double-edged sword. For some, it is a symbol of stoic resolve, a quiet strength in the face of overwhelming adversity. For others, it is a reminder of a time when I was powerless, a time when the lies of one person nearly destroyed everything I held dear. But I have long since learned that power lies not in forgiveness, but in the courage to stand alone and confront the truth, no matter how painful it may be. I remember the day I finally met my own reflection in a quiet cafe, the day I saw not a broken man, but a survivor. My eyes, once filled with despair, now burned with the fierce determination of someone who had reclaimed his life. In that moment, I vowed to never allow myself to be silenced again, to speak my truth, to remind the world that betrayal might wound, but it can never break the spirit of someone who refuses to be defeated. The story of my downfall and subsequent revenge is not one of triumph over evil, but rather a testament to the cost of deceit and the power of truth. I have learned that forgiveness is not a gift I can bestow upon those who have wronged me, for in forgiveness lies the danger of forgetting the lessons of the past. Instead, I carry with me the memory of every slight, every act of treachery, and let it fuel the fire of my resolve. I have become a living embodiment of the fact that sometimes the only way to heal is to let the truth be known, no matter how painful it may be for those who refuse to see it. Today, as I sit alone in the quiet of my modest apartment, I know that the legacy of that fateful day will forever haunt the corridors of my mind, but I also know that I have emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. I have learned that there is a stark beauty in the refusal to be silenced by injustice, a beauty that lies in the unyielding commitment to one's own truth, even when the world demands silence and forgiveness. So here I am, sharing my story not for pity, but as a stark reminder that betrayal leaves scars, and sometimes the only way to survive is to stand tall and let the truth cut through the lies. I have no illusions about what I have lost or what might have been, but I also have no regrets about the choices I made. I chose to fight for my name, to reclaim the dignity that was stolen from me, and in doing so, I have found a semblance of peace. The pain remains, but it is tempered by the knowledge that I have finally taken back control of my destiny. I know that my silence might still be demanded by those who cling to the remnants of a broken family, but I can no longer afford to be the silent martyr of a twisted narrative. I have chosen to speak out, to let the world know that no matter how cleverly lies are spun, the truth has a way of emerging, even if it takes years, even if it comes at a steep price. I am not a man defined by the betrayal of my cousin or the indifference of my family. I am a survivor, a seeker of justice, and above all, a living reminder that some betrayals can never be forgiven, only repaid in full. As the final chapters of this tumultuous journey come into focus, I stand at a crossroads between a past marred by deceit and a future illuminated by the harsh light of truth. I have no desire to rebuild the shattered bonds of family. The wounds are too deep, the scars too permanent. Instead, I choose to move forward with the certainty that my life is mine to command, that no amount of false promises or hollow apologies can ever undo the cost of betrayal. In sharing my story, I hope that those who have suffered similar injustices will find solace in the knowledge that they are not alone. The path of revenge is fraught with peril and often leads to more pain than anticipated, but sometimes it is the only path that remains when the institutions of trust and loyalty have crumbled beyond repair. I stand as living proof that even in the aftermath of betrayal, one can rise again, wiser, hardened, and determined to never be defined by the actions of others. I have seen the faces of those who once condemned me, and I have watched as the full weight of their hypocrisy crushed the very foundations of what they once claimed to uphold. I have no illusions about the price of truth, but I also know that there is a certain purity in the pursuit of justice, purity that transcends the petty notions of forgiveness. My silence, once imposed by the cruelty of betrayal, has been transformed into a resolute roar that echoes the truth I now carry. And so, I remain, a solitary figure in a world that demands conformity, a beacon of unyielding truth in the face of relentless betrayal. I have chosen to live a life defined not by the falsehoods of others, but by the undeniable reality of my own strength and resolve. Every word I write, every memory I cling to, is a testament to the fact that some betrayals leave scars that can never heal. But in those scars, there is a story of survival, of relentless determination, and above all, of justice that must be exacted without compromise. This is my truth, raw and unfiltered, a truth that will echo in the silence of those who once tried to bury it. I share it now, not as a plea for reconciliation, but as a declaration that I will never ever be silenced again.